Welcome to this week's edition of This Week In Perfect Team. I am your host, DRC, and we are starting this stream for the first time with a hype train. We've never done this before. Look at this. Mac, wait till next year. MW46, you guys are awesome. Thanks for all the love, guys. That is so cool. And wait till next year. Free Day Brown keeping it going. All right, anyway, so what do we do here? We are the show that provides instant community feedback on all new content releases. So the way it works is Chris drops cards, and then we talk about them. Chris drops cards, we tell you which ones you want. Chris drops cards, and we tell you which ones you might want to stay away from. I'm just kidding. They're all great. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Tonight we're breaking down the 13 Team of the Year cards. And joining me, as always, to help break it all down is none other than the keeper of the sheet, your Kidneys. How you doing tonight, Kidneys?
I'm doing okay. I just got called a neckbeard in the chat by Dave, so doing a little less okay. But I'm happy to be here. I'm excited. We got a big content drop tonight, so let's get into it.
Well, a spade can be called a spade. All right, so if this is your first time joining us, please do follow. Please do click the notification bell so that when we do go live in the future, you are aware of it. We do have a wonderful show set up for you guys tonight. So what are we doing? We are running through the 13 Team of the Year cards. We are going to do OK Boomer, OK Zoomer, and I'm still hunting that first victory, and I think tonight is the night. And then lastly, we are going to do some Park Factors 101. Maybe you've never changed your home park. Maybe you've never done it in a way that actually benefits your roster. So what we're going to do is some very basic conversation around what park factors are, the impacts they have on the performance of your team, and some players that might fit uniquely well in some of those parks. So make sure you stick around for that. All right, let's jump right in. So we've got a level 5 hype train rocking. Oh, wait, before we jump in, quick program schedule reminder. So Thursdays, we do this show right after Chris. Whenever he's done, we go on. Sundays, I broadcast the Perfect League World Series. It's a ton of fun. You get to see who wins the highest league in the land. And I will do this until I'm relegated. And as you can see by my year-to-date record, 45-53, not looking so hot. So we're going to need to catch some fire before the year's over, or else my ability to broadcast on Sundays is going bye-bye. All right, Tuesdays, we do a different kind of show. It's called Reading Between the Lineups. And the spirit of that show is to really get to the person behind the Discord persona. So we've talked to Walnut, we've talked to MacJax, we've talked to Quanta Condor. Just last week, we had Chris Jardine. And next Tuesday, we're going to have Simple Hunter. It's a fun format and a lot of fun to watch that interview with you guys. All right, let's jump in. First card, JT Realmuto. Now, the thing that sticks out most to me with JT Realmuto is that we were waiting on him to become perfect all year long. Well, he is perfect now, and this card will stay perfect. However, this is a bit of a bird profile. And if you weren't with us last week, we denoted that profiles that are heaviest on power and that cascade down from there kind of look like a middle finger. And Realmuto is classic bird material here. Now, you do get really good catcher ability. 96 on the ability, 116 on the arm. But if you look at the bat similarity score table, and just real quick for any new viewers, we'll walk through what it is you're looking here. What this is a programmatic analysis of who JT Realmuto is closest to. So if we're looking at his number one most similar player from an overall perspective, it's Boog Powell 91. So you would start at Boog Powell 90 or 92. You'd start at that Boog Powell card. You would give him one contact. You would take 8I from him, and you would take away one avoid Ks, and then that would be JT Realmuto. So that's how this works. And then this column here that's in light blue, this is OPS at the very highest level in Perfect League. And if you see a completely empty column here, that means that none of his most similar players are used in the Perfect League. So enough out of me. Kidneys, let's bring you in here. What do you see and what do you like about JT Realmuto?
What I like is the crazy catcher ability and the crazy arm. What I don't like is really low avoid K, not a lot of contact, and a very high power rating means he's going to have a lowered BAPIP with not a lot of contact to go with it, means it's going to be really low. So when we're looking at his comps, he's comping against a lot of low diamonds, some golds. He's really just not going to hit the ball very well. So when you're looking at catchers, if you want to really defend the catcher, there's not a lot of reason to run him over the similar competition as in like an Ivan Rodriguez or an Essie Bench or some of the other really high defensive catchers.
Yeah, and I think that's the sticking point there. This is a niche position here. Your VL catcher. So for him to be relevant, he's got to be competitive there. And I don't see enough in this profile to knock off Ivan Rodriguez for someone wanting to go heavy on defense. And I don't see enough in this profile to knock off Roy Campanella if someone wants to skew a little bit more to the glove. Moving on, we've got Freddie Freeman. Excellent real-life player and pretty darn good card you see here. Anytime that someone's most comped card here, top bat similarity score, is Ty Cobb, arguably the best hitter in the game, it's going to get my attention. So let's take a look at his versus right profile, which is the way that I always look at split dominant cards or platoon type cards. So let's look at his versus right profile. And the number one comp there, Ty Cobb. But how do we compare to Ty Cobb? We start with Ty Cobb and we take away 7 contact. We take away 2 avoid Ks. So you're not getting Ty Cobb performance out of Freddie Freeman. You're getting Freddie Freeman performance out of him, which still could be very good. You start with the 120 contact and you don't have a ton of power to hurt you in the BABIP department. It's actually lower than the contact there. And then it cascades down with a pretty acceptable avoid Ks of 80. Now defensively, he's got what I'd call an acceptable, probably more than acceptable, first base profile. Light on the range, but certainly acceptable with the error department. Gives him an 89 overall rating. So certainly can be deployed in the field. But Kidneys, how much do you think Freddie Freeman's going to hit?
This is a rough one, and I'm going to walk back a little bit from what I said on Discord and DLL and some other places. I actually think this is better than I thought it was V-Right because I didn't realize how high the BAPIP was. So if you're a little bit newer or you haven't watched this before, really what BAPIP means is it's a combination of what contact really is. So contact really isn't a stat. It's a little bit of a mix of K's, power, and BAPIP. And BAPIP is, if you hit the ball, it's batting average on balls in play. How often is it going to be a hit, right? How often you're going to get on base with that. And that's really the key to making a card a contact hitter. And because this card has a lower power than somebody like Stan Musial, I actually think might be a much better right-handed hitter. Now, the issue comes in with his left-handed profile is just so weak. I don't know if this card can even play in a platoon because of it in Perfect League. So the question is, can you make up for the weakness on this card with its strength, right?
Yeah, it is. And let's talk to who occupies that meta. And you can drop the meta emote in the chat. But who occupies the meta position of first baseman versus right-hand pitching? And it's Roger Connor. And Roger Connor has a profile that has produced for a very, very long time. No one can knock him off that position. And part of the reason that he's so hard to dislodge there is that he does pretty darn good versus left as well. So we're talking a high 700s OPS versus right, if not better, and then an OPS that sticks around in the 700s versus left, which Freddie Freeman will most definitely not give you. Freddie Freeman versus left is going to be well sub 600. The only hit you see in the bat similarity score is Honus Wagner, who's at 619, and he's doing that as a right-handed batter. So it's going to get real ugly. However, when you are having a left-hand batter, platoon, and face only right-hand starting pitching, you do get a pretty good percentage of those at-bats versus right-hand pitching. So I definitely think it's deployable. I don't think that if I had this card, I am dislodging Roger Connor quite yet until the data pushed me to that decision.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The thing is... do you ever run both of them maybe and put Cobb in left? I don't know. He's interesting. I think he falls into place. He's certainly good in diamond. Maybe I don't know. Connor is a card that's like really come back into popularity. I know his price has gone up $50K in the past week. back up to 170,000 from like 111,000. So I don't know. Maybe there's a world where this card becomes cheaper than Connor way down the road. I don't know. He's interesting. He's not a better fielder, so maybe he is a DH down the road. But he's certainly going to be better V right, but the V left is the struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we just need to see how good that V-right profile is, and does it make it worth stomaching those at-bats that come versus left-handed relief pitchers later on in the game. And let's move on to the next card while we call out some love in the chat there from API and MacJax. Thanks, guys. All right, DJ LeMahieu. Very interesting profile, and when I say that, I really see like an inverse bird here. We're going to need to come up with a name for it, but this is not too dissimilar to the way that cards like Gwyn and Ichiro and cards that really are heavy on the contact and avoid and then lower on the power. Now, it's less pronounced with DJ LeMahieu here, but this card can be interesting in a lot of different ways. One, it's not very splitty. Two, it can play some defense. 88 range. It's not something that I'd recommend you put at second or even really recommend you put it at third because of the deficiency with the arm. But as a reserve, certainly playable there. And then we talk about first base, and LeMahieu is not a short guy. I think you might just be able to tell us what he's going to train to at first base, and it might be something that's interesting for people. Now, from a bat similarity score, there's not a lot of hits in there, but that doesn't scare me too much because these profiles aren't that widely available, and his only hit there is Tony Gwynn. And versus left, he's Tony Gwynn minus a little contact, minus a little avoid, and then getting a lot of eye. So this is a very interesting card to me, but what do you think?
So, remember, was it last week? It was last week when we got Derek Jeter, and everybody in the chat is telling me Derek Jeter can play V left. And I haven't really seen if Derek Jeter plays V left or not. This card is what you wanted Derek Jeter to be, but he plays both sides of the plate. And not only does he does that, this card is 6'4". He's a 6'4". He's a very tall person. And as a very tall person, he can train up to 115 according to the calculator at first base with that error in that range. So he is, he doesn't clock very high on my spreadsheet with the metrics, but he also clocks in very high in the BABIP because of the lower power. And I think this card is going to heavily outperform the similarity scores and heavily outperform his similar compositions. And so I think this is a card that you could play on first in something like a very defensive-oriented team and maybe get some really good hits and a very consistent hitter, a very high average hitter, and somebody that could exceed expectations. Now, I don't know if it's going to be enough to play at the highest level, but certainly a card that will play in Diamond for you.
Would you consider yourself a very tall person?
I am 6 foot, so I'm not a short person.
Okay, but not very tall.
Not 6'4", no.
All right, Fernando Tatis. So Tatis is one of my favorite players in real life, but I don't have a ton to love about this card. Everything kind of feels like it's a little light in terms of being able to use it in perfect league or being able to use it at the highest level. The contact is sub 100. The avoid Ks is a near toxic in the 50s for both sides. And then the defense, you're not going to make up any ground there. You're going to be substandard at all three skill positions on the infield, and the bat's not going to be there to play first base.
Yeah, pretty much. He has like a little bit sub-average defense at third base for what we see at the highest level, and he just has no avoid K. It's really, really low, so it doesn't really matter what the rest of his profile is unless it was absolutely absurd, and it's not. He doesn't even have 100 contact on either side, so he's just not really going to hit the ball, and he's not really too great of a fielder either, so Chris kind of spent sub-minute on this card, and, I'm not really too thrilled about saying too much more about him either.
Yeah, when Out of the Park gets the chain rating that we know is coming, this one's going to be well over 100, and at that point, I think we can start playing the Tatis card.
For sure.
Next, we've got Manny Machado. And this card is not too dissimilar to the card we just saw. Maybe a bit more playable at the lower levels due to the versus left-hand profile here. And then he could probably play a stronger third base than Tatis could. but another card that I don't think is going to dent the meta at the highest level. As you look at the bat similarity scores, you don't see a ton here, and what you do see, a couple of hits on the versus left table, are both sub 700 Perfect League OPSs. And if you're sub 700 on the OPS, you had better be bringing Ozzy level defense, and Manny's not going to do that.
The problem with this card really is just its power is higher than its contact, and its K isn't like either way remarkable. It's not on the lower end, but it's not on the higher end. So you don't either get the consistency and you don't get the high BAPIP. Its BAPIP is actually very, very low at 50. And the contact just is too low to boost that BAPIP up. And then you kind of have the, like you touched on, the substandard defense. So there isn't really too much going for this card, even though it looks kind of solid all around. It just really doesn't get like a big boost in any direction, making it really great.
Yep, absolutely. And thanks in the chat, Simple and API and Mac and Chuck. You guys all rock. All right, Juan Soto. This card was a cup of coffee in the middle of the stream there. I really like what I see here. You see a ton of really high ratings. And one of the points that you made to me, Kidneys, before we went live here, is that it's almost a crime against this card that the blue bars themselves kind of cap at 100, because it kind of hides the fact that all of those ratings are significantly above 100. We're talking 120 plus on the contact VR. The gap power is both over 110 on each side. The eye is off the charts there, 123 and 126. And the avoid Ks is where this card is deficient. 74 versus left, 76 versus right. So that's going to be what you experience with this card, a slightly higher K percentage. But as you look at the bat similarity score, you see a ton of hits here, ton of hits. And as we focus on the versus right table, number one comp there's Ted Williams. He's Ted Williams with less contact and less avoid Ks. He's also could be compared to a Babe Ruth that has a ton less power, which, according to what you've been telling us every week, Kidneys, could end up being a good thing. Ruth, less power with more contact. What do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of the issue. It's not necessarily more contact, but he's got much better splits than the Ruth does. And the way less power just gives him a better BAPIP, and his BAPIP clocks in at 80, which I think makes this card playable. I was having a discussion with API before the show, and he really thinks this card is pretty terrible. And I don't know. I'm a little torn. I first thought it was really good because, like we were saying, other than the avoid K, the lowest number on this card is 113, which is absolutely absurd, right? But then the K's, it's a 75, right? So where can we meet that benchmark? Where does the avoid K's do it? And then where is the power, relative to the BAPIP? Is it too high still at 130, or is it good enough? So I think this is something we need a little bit more data on. Also, something API mentioned to me is there's a flaw potentially in the BAPIP formula. So that's something I'm going to look into, he's going to look into, and we might try and update that in terms to high power. So if that's potentially the case, it could fix a lot of models, like wrongly evaluating cards like Williams, Ruth, and Soto. Mm-hmm. So it kind of changed my opinion last second on where this card stands, because I know I talked with you at first and said this card is really good, but I still think in like a lefty boosted park, because of the high BAPIP on this card, it's going to be very powerful. So I think if you're a guy who likes playing in a lefty park or lefty cheese, this is your DH, and then you push Ty Cobb to left field. But I'm not as confident on this as I was before.
A flaw in the BABIP. That sounds like a disturbance in the force to you. I mean, you're Mr. BABIP.
I am Mr. BABIP. So I was very shaken when he said that, and it's something that it's going to keep me up at night. I'll probably all night tonight. So it is. This card really intrigues me. I really want to believe it's good. So I'm going to believe it's good. I'm gonna put my faith in this one, I think.
Yeah. So let's talk for a second about if this card's good. What happens? Who gets bumped? So the defensive profile with only 75 range is less than everyone who's out there right now. which means that he has to be DH'd if you want to be competitive at the highest level. So that means that you're going to need to push Cobb into the field because you're not going to be taking Cobb out. So if Cobb goes into the field, you're going to want to hide him in left. And if you push Cobb into left, then you're displacing oftentimes Tris Speaker. And so the equation becomes, is Soto's bat that much better than Tris Speaker's bat that you're willing to take the defensive downgrade from Speaker to Cobb? And that's the question that the data coming out on Soto, once people start running him at the highest level, is going to need to answer.
I actually don't think, the more I've looked into corner outfield defensive downgrades, I'm going to be very anti-kidneys right now and say I actually don't think it's going to matter that much. But the real question is, do you think this card is a better bat than Speaker? And that's going to be something we're going to have to see practically for a very long time. And I think it's going to be a lot of people are going to probably heavily contest me when I say I think off the bat I like this card better than Speaker's bat, but that's a controversial opinion. We'll have to see how it plays out. But
for tonight, at least, this is Kidney's fave, Juan Soto, 100 Team of the Year. Next, we've got Ronald Acuna. And Ronald Acuna, one of the most fun players in real life, a player that you'd like on your fantasy baseball team, you'd love on your dynasty fantasy baseball team, but I'm not sure about a player that you want on your perfect team, league team. And what really holds him back for me is that, and I'll call it toxic again, toxic avoid Ks, 48 versus left, 47 versus right. And then if you look closely, if you really stare, if you get real close up to the ratings, this is kind of a bird profile. The 142 power stands out so significantly as the highest rating versus left. The contact is 50 less than that, just about, at 96. Then the avoid Ks is way, way less than that. So this card, I think, is going to have a really hard time hitting. And as we look at the bat similarity scores, you see only one hit there, and it's a Frank Thomas versus left. And this card really doesn't even compare to Frank Thomas. It's Frank Thomas missing a ton of contact and missing a ton of avoid Ks. So I think that's not even really a good comp because of how different they are and what categories that they're different. Now, defensively, Acuna, unlike the last card we looked at, is going to be good. Acuna can play a great corner for you with that 97 range, but the bat's just not going to be worth it.
Yeah, the issue is what this card is right here is an entry pool card. Now, you may be going, why am I saying this is an entry pool card? We're looking at a perfect card that's going to be very expensive. It's brand new. The reason I say that is a bunch of my friends have been playing an entry pool recently. And what you want in entry pool is high eye, high power. Shout outs to Sanji for that. But the reason is you want to walk and draw a ton of pitches so you wear out your opponent's pitching staff and they have to throw hitters, and then you hit all the home runs off of them. And outside of that, with 50 avoid Ks, you're probably not good for much else.
Yep, and next we have got Mookie Betts. Now, whenever we do these streams, the number one most important thing isn't to go through the cards. It isn't to do OK Boomer, OK Zoomer, which is coming up. It's not just to have fun. The number one most important thing to me is to make sure that my co-host, Your Kidneys, is comfortable. And I thought that this could be a painful card for my Red Sox fan friend here. And so I've gone ahead and taken the liberty of giving him back the Red Sox hat just for tonight. I know you don't get to keep him. I know you don't get to play with him again. You can't get root for him anymore. He's going to be in LA for quite some time. But just for tonight, just for the sake of this discussion, so you're in a good spot, your chi is calm, I've gone ahead and done this for you. And I'm going to let you bat lead off too. What do you think of Mookie?
You hurt me. You didn't replace the Dodgers logo. I still have to stare at it. So Mookie is another card, kind of gets similar to the Machado, where he's got a lot of blue stats, a lot of the turquoise stats, but in reality, he's got a power higher than the contact, and he doesn't have anything else really too special, and the BABIP's low, and he just kind of doesn't clock out really great anywhere. And his defense is fantastic, and I really want to love this card because I am a diehard Red Sox fan, and I love Mookie Betts, and I am so sad to see him go. But There's nothing really too great about him. I mean, I think V left, which is his strong side, I had him at 34, and just being 34 on your strong side doesn't really cut it these days at the highest level. So you get this card, you could play it at a lower level, but other than that, not really going to cut it anymore. And 96 range is, more like a corner defensive outfielder nowadays as well. So, kind of is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a card from yesteryear. I think early on in the game cycle, it could have been very interesting. That combination of contact and avoid Ks for versus the left-hand pitching, I think could have been very interesting when combined with his outfield defense, which a lot of people were playing that Ichiro Suzuki 92 early on. So, it could have been a card to make some noise back then. But at this point, when you can't get away with 96 range in center field anymore, and the bat's just not going to be able to produce in a league of a lot better bats, I think it's never going to have its moment in the sun. Next, we've got Marcell Ozuna. I mean, how many Braves did we get tonight? I feel like every time I click, I see another Atlanta Brave, which is probably my second least favorite team in baseball, but we will soldier on here. This card's actually more interesting than I thought it was going to be, and it's because of that super duper high contact rating versus left-hand pitching. Now, it does come with a low avoid K, so I'm sure we won't be able to escape Kidney's soliloquy here without the word BABIP coming out. But, he pairs that 124 contact with a 91 eye. But as we look to the glove, it's a DH-only card. My sneaking suspicion is that as a DH-only card, the bat's not going to be there. You can see that from the fact that the bat similarity scores doesn't have a ton of hits there. But that is really off-the-charts contact. So I'm curious what you think, Kidneys.
The thing is with this card, it's kind of interesting because it's one of the few power hitters in the game that has off-the-charts contact and off-the-charts power, but it has the K low enough to supplement the B word. I won't say it because you called me out on it. But the B word is actually very high. It's a 91 on this card on the left side. So it's interesting. I don't think it plays. It's going to be really insane on a lower level. Like if you are in silver or gold, this might be like the best versus left card in the game because of that really weird profile. So go pick them up if you have a ton of points and nothing to do at a low level. Maybe if you're like Pidge or somebody, you like this card. But I think outside of that, I probably don't see this card seeing any play at a high level.
I mean, if you're Pidge, depending on the card and depending on which account you're talking about, you might love all the cards. True. And I bet this one would, to your point, rip up that entry-level league if you bumped into this in a pack.
Yeah.
However, if you're Pidge and you pull this card tonight, I think the first thing you're doing is rushing to the auction house, being that first sale, and trying to grab a milli from it. But I'm sure Pidge will be in the chat to tell me that my understanding of the auction house is entirely off base, with which he would be 100% correct. All right, moving on. We've got Max Fried. Starting pitcher Max Fried, another Atlanta Brave. I swear if there's another Brave, I'm going to throw something here. And as we look at this card, I'm going to jump immediately to our similarity scores. We see a ton of hits there. A lot of pitchers that pitch in Perfect League, but not a lot of pitchers that pitch well in Perfect League. And let's talk about what makes him different. He carries that extreme ground ball profile. We don't have a ton of them. And the ones that we do have, I don't think many of them are left-handed pitchers. So that makes him somewhat unique, somewhat interesting. And then from a pitch value perspective, only 3 pitches. Decent velocity, 93 to 95, and good pitch values. So he is going to get a nice little boost going to the pen. So I think this card likely can knock off some of those bullpen arms that have been hanging around for a while. Maybe your Ron Guidry, although he's got even less control versus left than Guidry, so maybe I'm going to eat my words there. But like your Eddie Plank, your Randy Johnson. But I can't say that my opinion is fully formed on this card yet about where it fits.
The thing about this card is he's left-handed, and he's a very nice-looking left-handed starter. He's almost reverse split, right? He's pretty neutral in the splits overall, and he's only got 3 pitches. The issue is the stamina, and I never thought I would see stamina prevent a card from being a starter, because I think if the stamina is like 80, you see him like just coming out to start as on a lefty team, and he just kills you because it's a really solid card overall and probably one of the best left-handed options. I think as an extreme ground ball, it just adds more utility to him. But I'm really interested to see the stuff boost on this card, bearing it only has 3 really good pitches. And with the stamina, I mean, maybe this card is an absolute monster out of the pen. We're still kind of working through the mess that is pseudoing right now, but I think people have kind of stabilized that it's still pretty good. And this card is going to be an absolute monster of a weapon for that.
Yeah, it isn't very splitty. It's not very very dominant against the same side, which is where you see it deviate from existing meta cards like Guidry and Plank. I'll say Randy Johnson isn't very splitty. But as you look at what he's going to do against the first batter he's called upon from the pen, you're going to look at that versus left-hand batter column there. And it's only before stuff boost 125, 87, 93. Whereas Plank is significantly better on the movement there, and I think he's better on the control too. So it could be that Fried, similar to like a Carl Hubble at this point, isn't quite so dominant versus that same side, so you just end up looking elsewhere for that role in your pen.
That's fair. I don't know. I think I've leaned more at least recently to having a neutral overall in the pen because I just don't trust the AI enough to come out with the good good matchups enough. And you do have to put some faith in the AI. I feel like you're just going to lose a lot. But I think there's a lot better to be said about this card as a starter than Plank. The issue with Plank is against right-handed batters. I mean, my Plank in DLL has walked almost 3 batters every 4 innings this season, which is just, horrid, right? So it's bad. And I think the slight buff on the control on this card might be enough to put it over the threshold. So I don't know. He's interesting to me. I really like having another extreme ground ball, really good lefty, and I think his stuff boost might be a lot better than Plank. What does Plank have for pitches? Let me just check. Plank has 3, but they're not quite as high. So I don't know. That's a good comparison. I'm not entirely sure now how I feel. But
and then Master Chief asking in the chat if we see him as a follower, and I would say because of the stamina, no. You're going to bring him in if you're doing like a true pseudo and pulling your starter after 3, 4, 5 hitters. You're going to pull him in, and he's going to wear out rather quickly, and then you're going to be giving the game to your bullpen in like the 6th. And I never like to routinely give my bullpen 3 or 4 innings to try to work around. So I would not envision using Fried as a follower very frequently.
I think I really like what Quanta Condor said in the chat. This is some weird kind of pseudo opener. Is an excellent point because maybe you have him go once through the lineup in a few batters and then come out, right? After a bad matchup. Or maybe you do what API experimented with and you have him double pseudo where you put him in for a little bit and then you try and pull him out again after, an inning or 2, right? So I don't know. I just feel like this card has 2 good ratings to not be played somewhere, but I'm not just the stamina just limits him as a starter, and I feel like he'd be a great starter. So
next we've got Shane Bieber. I love me the Biebs. And I love him not only for how good he is as a real baseball player, not only for how good of this perfect team card it is, but I love him first for what he's done for my fantasy team. And I'm sure you all are just dying to hear about this, so I'll just indulge you a bit. But I was able to pick up Bieber. I'm in a Dynasty League, and I picked him up before he was really a thing because I thought he was a approach adjustment away from dominating, and him actually becoming the dominant ace that he is today has been just an absolutely awesome thing to develop. And as we look at his card here, this is a starter with stock stuff in the 150s. Holy cow. I mean, what's Pedro at? I mean, that's a ton of stuff for a starting pitcher. Now, stamina is only 73, so a lot of what we said about Fried is somewhat applicable here. Fried was 66. And the control here, I don't love the control. When you're sub 90, you've got some problem with walks at the very highest level. So I think for me, Bieber is going to be a bullpen card. And as you look at the Perfect League similarity score table there, a lot of the names there are bullpen cards. You know, your Bob Feller 100, your Red Ruffing 100, your Bobby Matthews 100 as we look at the versus right table there. So I think that's where this card's going to fit in. And what I like about it is it's bringing more control than Feller. Feller has been very effective, but he's very, very volatile. His walks per 9 are just off the charts, and I absolutely despise that, especially late in game. So Bieber's going to be better than that at the cost of some stuff. And as we look to estimate what the stuff boost is going to be, we need to take into account that we've got 5 pitches here. He does have the pitch values to justify a big stuff boost. He's also at 95 to 97 on the velocity, so I think it'll be good. It's not going to be like Walter Johnson good. It's not going to be Bob Feller good. But I think, at least for my personal preference to not have a ton of walks in my bullpen, I really like this card. I'm actually calling it my fave. But what do you think?
It's really good. First impression of this card, I didn't have it as highly. I think I was just so taken aback by the control on this card. And while 87 isn't anything bad, Shane Bieber's like a legend for his absolute control and dominance of the plate. I was just expecting a little more. But certainly this card is great, and it's going to be an absolute monster out of the pen. It's probably a little bit better version of the Bob Feller, as you can definitely see in the comparison and the similarity scores. Probably, again, doesn't really have like stamina start, nor do you really want probably a card with 87 control starting, but just overall, he's going to be an absolute monster with that high of a stuff, and he'll probably get a pretty significant stuff boost with his pitch set. So overall, a really good card. You'd probably be pretty pleased to have him. He should definitely go for quite a bit.
Yep, and calling out Mac Jacks, Walnut, wait till next year, and Chuck in the chat. Thanks for the love, guys. Yeah, this card is really awesome. I'd love to have this card for no reason other than just to get Feller out of my pen. The 6 walks per 9 that you get with Feller on an annual basis just isn't my cup of tea. And whatever that Bieber stuff upgrade gets to, whether it's 170, whether it's 175, it's going to be worth it. Moving on, we've got Devin Williams, another reliever here. Now, a reliever with a bit of stamina, 23. So this is not a 17, and that actually does make a difference, and we can talk about that a bit here. From a stuff perspective, he's very, very high, almost starting like our Shane Bieber here. So he's at 153, 162 on his strong side there. Very good movement with 90 plus, but we've got a control problem. We've got to talk about. There are not many, and maybe I should say there are not any cards that play in Perfect League with a control profile this low. As we look at his similarity scores, you see a ton of cards that people are no longer using, with the one exception being this Eric Gagne card. And as you compare him to Gagne, he's got a little bit more stuff, good bit more movement, and the floor absolutely falls out on the control. But what do you think?
Yeah, that's pretty much the issue, is you don't really see anyone play kind of a top-down pitcher anymore where they're all stuff built and they don't have any control, because control is just such the deciding factor. Giving up free runners on base is so important that you just can't afford to do it anymore in the meta, how it's shaped up. So even though he's got 23 stamina, he's a ground ball pitcher, his stuff is through the roof, and his movement's going to prevent home runs. It's just really not acceptable. He's going to walk so many guys. You just can't let people on base. So the rest of this card is great, but the problem is his flaw is probably the most significant flaw you could have in a pitcher. Yeah,
and so if you pull him and you want to play him, he's going to dominate your gold league. He might string together 40 straight saves. He's going to do pretty good in your diamond league. Year to year, could have some down years, could have some rough years because of that control. Last but not least, we've got Liam Hendriks. And this card is a bit of a horse of a different color. You've got the good stuff here, albeit a slight downgrade from Devin Williams, but you've got very acceptable to good control. So whereas Williams was 90-ish on the movement, Hendriks has that same movement, but he's picking up 30 control on him there. He's also a ground ball pitcher. And as you look at who he compares to here, he's kind of a Gagne. I would compare him most to Gagne. Gagne, less stuff, but getting juicy goodness of movement and a lot of juicy goodness of control. And that's a trade that I'm going to make 10 times out of 10. I'll give away 12 stuff to get 3 movement and 6 control. But what do you think?
Exactly. It's like we just talked about. Control is everything right now, and so getting a pitcher, that you're gonna get more control out of at the cost of stuff is probably a net bonus. And on top of that, for somebody like me that thinks this is always a bonus, and not everybody agrees with me, but he's a ground ball pitcher as well. Gives him another plus in my book. So I think this card is better than Gagne. Now, I think Gagne is good enough that we could see a wave of people running true relief pitcher pens if you have the money to do so. Gagne is very expensive. This card will be very expensive. But it's just a really great all-around relief pitcher card. It's going to be really good. You're going to see it played everywhere. If you have it, you're going to play it. That's just pretty much how it's going to be.
So let's talk for a second about why someone would choose to run an all relief pitcher pen. Like, what would be the benefits of doing that versus having your converted starters?
The benefits are really the ability. So the change they made when they switched from 20 to 21 is they found that too many people were putting starting pitchers in the pen. So they added the ability for relief pitchers to recover a bit faster and pitch back-to-back days. Now, sometimes starting pitchers can pitch back-to-back days, so it's not like entirely set in stone, but the advantage is you could probably play them on faster hooks and get more use out of them if I were to be understanding it correctly. And that would be a more flexible kind of bullpen that way. You'd probably have to run like an extra person in your bullpen to pull it off, but overall, you'd get some more flexibility there, maybe get some better matchups out of it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so as we look at bullpen management, the reason that Hoffman card and now the Rivera card were so sought after is we didn't really have that nails down a back end of bullpen guy that could come out there and close a game down for you on Monday and then come back on Tuesday and do it again. We had some high stuff starters that people were putting back there, and to get around the recovery challenges, oftentimes people had to run 2 stoppers. And so now that we've got some legitimate closers, people can actually run legit closers again. And if we're filling out the middle of a bullpen with a Liam Hendricks and with an Eric Gagne, we're going to be able to do that with more spots. Now it just comes down to team design, team concept, how much are you pseudoing? How much flexibility do you want on a game-to-game basis? How much flexibility do you want when you get into a short playoff series to be able to move things around and have those options? And the more true relief pitchers you have in your pen, the more you're taking cards off the table in that vein. But I could foresee a lot of teams not caring about that and rather having that ability to have that better recovery. All right, that's the set. 13 cards, team of the year. I'll say that I was a bit surprised. I thought we got a lot more playable stuff than we were going to. And I think the reason that I was thinking that, which was incorrect, was that, we've been so conditioned to this game cycle that like live cards are so deficient to non-live cards. And not that these are live cards. These are obviously team of the year cards, special edition. But I just wasn't expecting a ton. I thought that we might get a card or two. And I feel like we got a whole lot more intrigue and a whole lot more interest than that. I'm excited to see these cards start getting pulled in the auction house and see what they start to go for, especially cards like the Soto, the Bieber, the LeMahieu. And then after they get pulled and after they get sold, I want to see them in Perfect League and see what kind of stats they're putting up. So this was a really cool content set. What do you think?
I liked it. I think we got some really interesting options. Fried and Bieber are certainly really good. Hendricks is great. I'm kind of interested to see how Soto plays, if he's another fluke in the model or if he's actually as good as he says he is. I wonder if LeMahieu can overperform the model because of his BABIP. It's an interesting set to me. I think we definitely got enough playable cards that this is definitely a win in my book.
All right, it's halftime, and what do we do at halftime? We play everyone's favorite game show, Okay Boomer, Okay Zoomer. And the way this works is I show Kidneys 3 things from the 90s, and he has to identify them. And then he will show me one horrendous Zoomer meme from today, and I'll try to make sense of it. let's get started. All right, this one comes courtesy of Chuck, and we want to know what bands are on these guys' shirts.
No idea. I mean, I've seen the image before, but I could not tell you what bands are on their shirts, nor could I even tell you what TV show this is, so I guess you can take points off for that one.
Wow, can't name either character?
Nope.
Oh, kidneys, you are showing your age here. This is none other than Beavis and Butthead, and on their shirts are AC/DC, and let's see if someone in the chat, Crash SF Giants already had it. Metallica. So thanks for that submission, Chuck. If you want to get your 90s pop culture images up here for Zoomer in future weeks, DM me. I'm always looking for content. All right, next. This one comes from Mr. Walnut himself, who now has an emote for everyone to enjoy in our chat. So what is this? What on earth could this thing be?
Is that Nintendo who made this? The Power Glove?
Oh, no. You are 2 for 2 on Walnut submissions.
Yeah, Walnut's got to do better, man. Nintendo made this as like a revolutionary gaming device for the NES, right?
I mean, it was revolutionary for its time, absolutely.
Yeah, and did it do well? I don't remember if it did well or not.
I didn't have one.
Yeah, but... guys, I couldn't actually see the image before it popped up because I have a delay on. I have like a 10-second delay. So, but yeah. Oh, it actually says Power Glove on the glove. Oh, I didn't even see that either. I know what a Power Glove is.
All right, we'll do better for you next week. That's 1 for 2 for the kidneys. And last but not least, we've got a submission from Wait Till Next Year. Who is this guy? And what show in the 90s was he a big part of?
I do not know. I do not know this, man.
Oh, no. It's none other than Al. Flannel Al. Is this helping you, or do you not know this guy either?
I mean, I know Tim Allen.
There you go.
I am blanking on the name of the show, but I know the show.
So their show within the show was called Tool Time.
Okay.
But what was the name of the actual show?
What was the name of the actual show? I can't remember it right now. I've seen the actual show, so I know it. But
I'm blanking on it right now.
Home Improvement.
Home Improvement. There it is.
Yes. Okay.
If I would have asked you about his neighbor Wilson, would that have helped?
No. I mean, I've only seen like very little of the show, but I know like Tim Allen and Home Improvement. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we are giving you 1 for 3. That is a rough week for the kidneys. Let's see if I can beat him. So on the other side of this click, we've got a Zoomer meme. Here we go. What is wrong with you and your Zoomer friends?
I wanna shout out my friend. Let me see if he's in the chat right now. Is Swecky okay is in the chat? I can't actually
what is
tell.
This?
There's too many people in the chat. Swecky Okays is a legend for making this happen today. One of my friends had the idea because I posted this meme in the chat and he said, "Let's make this happen." And I asked Swecky Okays did our emotes. He's here. He's in the chat.
Oh my
God!
God!
I love Swecky for making emotes for us, but. He made this happen. So do you have any idea what this is?
Oh my gosh. Well, you're obviously rubbing the bald man's head for good luck here. Unless I'm missing something, but...
No. So it's very simple. It's just Pet the Blank. And it started as a Twitter post of somebody saying retweet to Pet the Frog. And then it just blew up and it became a sensation on Twitch, where they would put this hand petting emotes and it's kind of just taken over social media. So we decided to make you, and there you go. It's Pet the DRC.
Wow. Well, I am going ahead and claiming victory for this week's OK Boomer, OK Zoomer because you used my likeness in your meme. And I happen to know who I am. So that is going to conclude this week's OK Boomer, OK Zoomer. And what we're going to transition to now before we close the showdown is really Park Factors. Park Factors 101. A good buddy of mine TexCow22, hope he's in the chat because I'm calling him out right now, has been playing this game exactly as long as I have and has never changed his park factors. Not once. Not because he didn't know that he could. Not because he doesn't have an interest in doing it if it helps his team win, but because he didn't really know where to start and he's too lazy to figure it out. So what we're going to try to do on today's show is just walk through what park factors are, what are some of the more common park configurations that people are doing, and what are some players that might fit well in one park versus another. So let's jump right in. So what we've got for you today are 4 different park configurations, 4 of the more popular ones. Now, there are a whole lot more than this, and there's nuance in between these as well. So these aren't the only 4 configurations you can do, but if we're trying to create some buckets, we've chosen 4 for you tonight. So we've got neutral, we've got pitchers. So neutral is just going to be ones all the way down for your park factors. We've got pitchers park, which is where you nerf everything all the way down. So you're taking averages down to 0.9, you're taking your extra base hits down to 0.5, and you're taking your homers down to 0.9. And then we've got a lefty and a righty park. And so for a lefty park, you would basically start at that pitcher's park build, but then max out your left-handed batter options. And then you would do the inverse for a righty park. So let's talk first about some players that we think are uniquely situated to stand out in a neutral park. So we'll go ahead and load those up. And we've got Walter Johnson, face of the franchise, Warren Spahn, face of the franchise, a couple of starting pitchers, potentially a bullpen option for Walter Johnson there. And then Luke Appling, a stock shortstop who can be trained all around the infield, and then Jackie Robinson, a stock second baseman who can be trained all around the infield. So Kidneys, why did you pick these players for a neutral park, and why do you think that they would perform well there?
So just some shout outs before we get started on this exercise. I want to shout out CFed, API, and MacJax for helping me with this. Just have some reference. I'm not the best with ballparks myself, but so really, I'll start with the hitters here. So Appling is just one of those players with even splits, which is really helpful in a neutral park because you want to be able to play both sides of the plate pretty evenly. And the advantage of an even park is that you can punish the split-heavy lineups and you can punish the players who are lefties or righties heavy teams with your neutral down the road parks. You can't be pseudoed, you can't be platooned, right? And things like that. So Appling is one of those players that hits both sides of the ball and has fantastic defense. So you can play him at second, you could play him at short, but you don't see that a lot. You play him at third. He's just a really great overall player. Same thing with Jackie. He really plays third or first nowadays. Some people do play him at second, but overall, great hitter, plays both sides of the ball, and fantastic speed, defense, you name it.
And then did you speak to Johnson and Spahn yet?
Right, so Johnson and Spahn. Spahn is kind of just another echo of Appling and Robinson, but as a pitcher. So what you can do with Spahn is he's just a pitcher that plays to both sides. And now we've talked a lot about the fact that, if you're a left-handed pitcher, right-handers hit you better, and that's true. So he'll still be hit a little bit harder by right-handers. But the fact that his splits are so neutral gives you a really good lefty option as a starting pitcher that can just play to the best of his ability against both sides of the ball. Walter Johnson is in here for a different reason, and that's neutral parks are really interesting because they let you pseudo at an increased rate. And this is, a little more advanced, but the reason why is that you can pretty much bring out either side pitcher and not have a disadvantage when you're at home. Right. And so Walter Johnson is just pretty much overall one of the best suitors in the game because of his absurd, I think it's like a 42 or 46 stuff bump he gains in the pen. Right. So what is a pseudo? If you don't know what a pseudo is, I see that question in the chat. A pseudo is when you have somebody like it's an opener follower, if you know what that term is from baseball. So it's when you have somebody start the game, but they're not actually your starting pitcher. And then somebody else comes in after they've thrown like maybe to a few batters and they throw like your 6 or your 8 innings, right? So what you do is you send in a pitcher and you have him play against 3 batters, maybe till he gets to a bad matchup in the lineup. And then you take him out, right? And then you'll put in your Walter Johnson. You have him set to follower in your bullpen. And your Walter Johnson will throw, your next 6, 7, 8 innings and hopefully, win the game for you that way.
And let's talk for a second about some of the benefits of having a neutral stadium. So as you're playing your road games, you're having to play in everyone else's stadium designs. You're having to play in lefty parks, righty parks, pitchers parks, loaded parks. So you're having to, if you're playing the matchups and if you're putting your guys into the right position, you're having to tailor your team on those road trips. So one of the benefits of having a neutral park is when you get home, you're flexible. You can do what's needed to recover from those road trips, what's needed in terms of who's available, who is rested. And so you're not having to really tailor your lineup to any particular handedness. You're not stuck playing players that are tired. You're able to do that on the road and then kind of have your default mode at home, and really no matter where you are at within your fatigue cycle, be able to deploy a lineup that's competitive for you.
Yep, exactly. You hit on that. And it's also very helpful in the playoffs because as in the playoffs, you'll face a bunch of probably different parks and different setup teams, and it really lets you adjust your team and kind of play almost an anti-meta setup, right? And play against your opponent and build your lineup how you see fit. And you don't have to worry about necessarily, what your park factors are when you're factoring in who's your best options in your home park.
Yeah, and as we talk about parks here, I've seen just about every park type win a Perfect League World Series. So no one park is better than another park. Mac won 3 titles with a neutral park. We've seen other people win titles with neutral parks. We saw Jay Mallett win a title with a lefty park. We saw Highland Deer win a title with a righty park. So you can win with any park design you want if you are building your park intelligently around your team, or if you are going the neutral route and then spending your time and effort really tailoring your team to be able to compete more on the road. All right, let's talk about next the pitcher's park. So again, this is the park where you are minning out everything. You're taking the batting average down, you're taking the doubles down, you're taking the triples down, you're taking the homers down. You're making it very difficult to score runs. So who is going to thrive in a pitcher's park? So Kidneys has for us Greg Maddux, Andy Pettitte playoffs, Ozzie Smith, and Ricky Henderson. Walk us through your thinking here.
So really in a pitcher's park, what you're trying to do is you're trying to minimize your opponent's scoring, right? You have the minimum kind of factors, and you want a lot of balls in play with a high defensive team. So really, cards like Greg Maddux and Andy Pettitte will make your opponents put a lot of balls in play for your defense that you can necessarily try and get outs off of. And limit any high damage by minimizing home runs. Cards like Ozzie Smith are going to really maximize that defense and make sure that your pitchers don't, let up a lot of runs off those balls in play. And then Ricky Henderson is kind of an interesting thing Mac and I talked about a lot. The issue with the pitcher's park setup is you tend not to score a lot of runs. And so a card like Ricky Henderson gets on base a lot with his high eye, and then with his ability to steal and run the bases can potentially set you up for a lot of situations to score runs. So it's not the most conventional choice, but it's one to us that made enough sense to list him here.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So let's think about this for a second. If you are depressing how many good things happen when someone hits the baseball, then the people who have value outside of when they hit the baseball will be more valuable. So Ricky Henderson getting on base, Ricky Henderson's ability to swipe bags. And you can look at other hitters the same way, like someone like a Babe Ruth who can walk and get on base that way and have some base running value. You need to think about it that way. And then from a pitching perspective, you need to think about the guys that are giving up a lot of contact. And so Maddux, Pettitte, Glavine, those starting pitchers that are low in the stuff category. And if you're a budget player, we're talking about like your Deacon Philippe here, your Addy Joss, guys that are giving up a lot of contact are going to be hurt a whole lot less in one of these parks. Whereas a pitcher who's going to walk a lot of batters is not someone that you really want to load up on for that pitcher's park, because those walks are going to happen no matter what stadium you're in, and they're just going to hurt you more in that pitcher's park. So if you are running pitcher's park, don't have guys out there that are going to walk a ton of people. Your Bob Feller is not going to fit on your team there. All right.
Right. And I actually think pitcher's park, just quickly, is one of the cheaper builds. which is I don't know if that's a common opinion or not, but the reason is defense is very cheap, because you could play somebody like a bronze Aussie at short, and it's not that different from like a 100 overall Aussie. You can get an SC Greg Maddux, and then cards like you mentioned Deacon Felipe and Addy Joss are not expensive. So I think for me, when I was coming up, I played a Pitchers Park build, and I won quite a lot of games with it on a very tight budget. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Mac Jack's Rockport Rumblefish is a testament to that as well. They have played above their head for many weeks now and have competed within the DLL with a build millions less in L7 value against a lot stronger teams. All right, next we've got Lefty Park. And so for Lefty Park, what are we talking about here? We're talking about basically that pitcher's park, but you take the lefty average, left-handed batter average, and you jack it all the way up, and you take the lefty homers, and you jack that all the way up. Now, you do have optionality when it comes to doubles and triples. I've seen this done multiple different ways. The three most common modes that you see is either minning out the extra bases, having them neutral, or having them maxed out. You can do it any of the three ways. I personally min them out. But Kidneys has for us Tom Glavine 100, David Price face of the franchise, George Brett face of the franchise, and then the brand new Juan Soto Team of the Year card. Walk us through why you chose these.
So, also just looking at these lineups, just a note here. We tried to pick cards that are more unique to their park, right? So cards that are more going to thrive and excel in their park. So like, obviously, on pretty much every one of these teams, like you want your Ty Cobb, you want your Pager, right? You want your generic cards, right? But in a lefty park, there's some cards here that you wouldn't necessarily play in another park. Like George Brett, I think, is one of the best bats in the game if you're playing a lefty park. Mine has been doing phenomenal in DLL this year. I know Quanta Condor just shouted him out in the chat, and he's just one of those bats that goes above and beyond versus right-handed pitching, and when you're at home, he's just going to absolutely mash. I think this Juan Soto Team of the Year card is probably, again, controversial, but I think he's got a lot of potential right now, especially when you're going to be boosting his BABIP at home, and he's just going to – I think he's just going to really mash. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think he could look something like how Team of the Decade Ted looked way back in the day when he first came out, and he was pretty successful in a lefty park. So I think we could see something like that. David Price, he's a bullpen option for a lot of people, but on a lefty park, he's a top-tier starter. That's why he's on the list. He's just going to be an excellent card for you. And then the Tom Glavine is all the rage right now. You could probably play him in the pitcher's park as well, but just a fantastic card overall, dominating control and absolutely murders lefties, which is why we have Price and Glavine on the list, because when you're in the lefty park, you want to be able to punish your opponent's lefties at home so they don't get the advantages of your park, right?
Yeah, and someone in the chat, Erie GM, just says Gwynn face the franchise lefty cheese. And there are certain players that you play in any park no matter what. And Gwynn is one of them. Ty Cobb is one of them. Pedro Martinez is one of them. Rogers Hornsby, to me, is one of them. So for the players that are the best cards in the game, the best hitters in the game, the best pitchers in the game, it is just assumed in this exercise that they're going to be playing no matter what your park configuration is. All right, last and certainly not least, we've got the righty park. I feel like the popularity of the righty park build has gone down some, but who knows? Maybe it's on the upswing again. So what is the righty park? It is the inverse of the lefty park. So you're leaving lefties minned out, and you are juicing your righties. 1.1 average, 1.1 to the home runs. And Kidneys, you have for us 4 players: Cap Anson Special Edition, Joe DiMaggio face the franchise, Tom Seaver face the franchise, and then our nearly brand new Bob Gibson playoff card. Tell us why.
So Cap Anson is kind of similar to some of the logic for the neutral cards, where he's a right-handed card that's going to excel against both sides of the plate. But the advantage about him is he's going to really take the benefit of your park. So in the righty park, you're probably also going to want to play Jackie Robinson and Luke Appling somewhere in your configuration. But Cap Anson is one of those cards that's probably only going to see it play in a righty park right now, just because of how the meta is and how good Roger Connor is. Joe DiMaggio, face of the franchise, is just one of those cards that's kind of fallen off, not because he's terrible, but because of how competitive the outfield meta is. And so in a righty park, when you're boosting him, He just gets good enough, I think, to make it into the meta over the other outfielders. I see Hank Aaron in the chat. By a lot of people, Hank Aaron would be another great option, maybe over Joe DiMaggio in a DH kind of position. I like Joe better because he can play the outfield a little bit better. We have Tom Seaver faces a franchise, a card that's really great for you if you need like an ace on a budget. Or you're just below the highest end play of cards, but in a righty park absolutely thrives. Again, same logic as David Price and Glavine, but to the opposite side. If you're in a righty park, you want to stop your opponent's right-handed batters, from hitting. So you want Tom Seaver to pitch against them, and you want Bob Gibson because Bob Gibson absolutely destroys righties. And this is not something I thought I would be saying. Bob Gibson to start for you in a righty park. But for API this week in DLL, he's certainly proven Bob Gibson has a place starting in a righty park.
Very good. So that's going to conclude our Park Factors 101. There's many more nuanced questions that we can get into, many more just discussion points that we could get into about how teams build out their park factors and build out their rosters to play and act as a force multiplier for their factors. And we're happy to answer those questions either on Discord or in the chat now before we take off. But if you're not touching your park factors at all and you're just throwing out your team and hoping that they win, you're likely leaving a couple wins on the table per season at least. Take a look at the players you have. Take a look at the division you're in, take a look at the teams around you, and really try to build a strategy around where you're strongest and where visiting teams that are going to come visit you might be weak, where you could take advantage of them within your park. Now, I don't advocate doing a build that's going to just get you absolutely crushed on the road. So I don't want you to build an entirely righty park lineup and then go on the road and get absolutely crushed in neutral parks and pitchers parks and lefty parks. So you definitely want to strike a balance, and you want to be able to win your road games. But what I always target is to win 2 of 3 at home and then win 50-50 on the road. And park factors can be an asset to you in that objective.
Some great points I just see quickly. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But Mac Jax brings up a really good point I want to touch on. Is that park factors normalize, right? So if everybody's running a lefty park in your league, nobody's running a lefty park in your league. And that's kind of something, perfect team is a lot of relativity, right? So really, like, for example, the new Babe Ruth card, it's not really like, he has 170 power versus like 150 power. It's really just he has the highest power, right? And so it's a lot of things like that that are like kind of confusing and kind of different. But when park factors, you really have to read what your league setup is and read what the meta is going to be and try and counter that, right? So really, you don't want to be a follower. You don't want to just follow what everybody else is doing because you're just going to end up the same as them and you're not going to have an advantage.
Excellent point, Kidneys. Excellent point. So that is going to do it for us tonight. We went through the new cards. We did OK Boomer, OK Zoomer, and I claimed my first victory. And we just did some Park Factors 101. Perhaps there's going to be a more advanced Park Factors 2101 course to come in a future edition. If you have ideas for us that you'd love to see covered in that last segment that we do, let us know. We've got some ideas already that require some time and preparation, and we'll definitely get to them. But if there are other ideas that you have or something that you'd love to see, let us know, and we'd love to really put anything on that's educational, entertaining maybe. Who knows? But that is going to do it for us tonight. Make sure you join me on Sunday for what could just be my last Perfect League World Series broadcast. We'll have to see on that. I'm going to need a very swift turnaround this week. And then next Tuesday, make sure you join as I have Simple Hunter on. And then immediately following my stream, in theory at least, we'll be able to roll right into his 250,000th pack open, which is quite the achievement. But Kidneys, any final parting thoughts from you?
No, just excited. Great stream. Thanks, guys, for all the support. Thanks for showing up. We got a great thing going here, and just excited for all the weeks to come. Excited for the content. Excited for that big This Week in Perfect Team 100. Chris keeps pumping up, so let's just keep it coming.
Awesome. So if you're new to the stream, make sure you click the follow button. Make sure you click the notifications, and if you want to play with all of our new emotes that we've got flying around the channel, give consideration to subscribing as well. With that said, we'll go ahead and wrap things up, and then we'll see you on Sunday.